Welcome everyone to today's webinar. Delighted to have you all give up a part of your day to learn more about the value of the buyer experience. We're going to give about a minute or so to welcome everyone, as it is a very busy one. We've got lots to cover. But whilst we're waiting, Ollie, what's your take on the buyer experience? What does buyer experience mean to you?
I think it's just a big shift, because I think that it's when it's buyer experience, it's about making them the center of what happens in your sales process. It's no longer about a sales process. I think it's about the buying process, and the shift has completely changed. When we used to have to market and sell to people, then they had they were able to access everything online, and they start having more power, the actual buyer. And now it's shifting even further, and I think the buying experience is the center of everything we do, and it's less now about a sales process. It's about the buyer process and the buyer experience that we're giving them. Differentiator.
Absolutely. I know you've sold a fair bit of software, but you've also bought a fair bit of software as well. So I think the audience are in for a treat hearing your take today. And whilst we're just waiting for the last few people to join, love to have everyone introduce themselves in the chat, where you're dialing in from, your name, your company, even your LinkedIn profile. Be great for you all to connect with each other, because it sounds like all giving up your day, you've all got the same buyer-centric mindset. So yeah, I think it's a great opportunity to network with people and not just listen to us talk through things. And it is filling up nicely, so I think we might as well get a start. Ollie, are you ready?
Yes, ready to go.
Awesome. Cool. Well, thank you, everyone. Delighted to have you here. Excited to dive into this topic about why your buyer experience is more important than your sales process. I am Rory Sadler, the co-founder and CEO of Trumpet, the buyer enablement platform that helps revenue teams build collaborative workspaces and digital sales rooms. Spent over 8 years as a seller, as an IC, and then leading teams. And I saw firsthand at a company called Hotjar how the buyer experience can be as powerful as the product that you were selling. Joined here today by our brilliant CRO, Ollie, who I'll let introduce himself.
I thought I got a good promotion there. Thanks, Rory. So my name's Ollie Sharpe. I've been in the tech SaaS space for years. I started my career at LinkedIn, did 10 years at LinkedIn when no one actually knew what LinkedIn was. And I saw a big change happening there that I mentioned earlier about the power of the buyer and what they have access to. So 10 years at LinkedIn, I left LinkedIn, and then I set up a company called SalesLoft in EMEA as the MD for EMEA in SalesLoft, first person on the ground. Spent 3.5 years there before working with other companies and being an advisor to a few companies. And I joined Trumpet as an advisor about 19, 20 months ago, something like that, and been involved with them ever since, and joined as CRO a couple of months ago, where I'm loving seeing the impact that we can have on the sales industry and or the sales process within companies, and become more buyer-centric.
Brilliant. Thank you for that. Let's jump straight in. So I think we can all agree that buyers are busier than ever. It's very difficult to get them on a call these days. And we all live in a world of distraction. We have Slack pinging off nonstop. Our phones are going off endlessly. And I think especially since the pandemic, the world has been digitized faster than ever, which means capturing that buyer attention in and throughout an entire sales cycle is more difficult than ever. And at the same time, markets, technology is exploding. I think Chris Orlob shared a brilliant stat that in 2015, roughly 5,000 MarTech companies existed. So as a CMO, plenty of choice. Fast forward 10 years, this is now about 35,000 different providers. How do you decide when there just keeps popping up new and new different providers every single week, every single day? More so with AI emerging. So let's put this into perspective. Let's say your category has 50 different competitors in it. Next year, that means there will be 60. You have to keep innovating. You have to keep meeting these new buyer expectations and being at the forefront of your category. And in 1 year, a buyer can have 1,500 different tools put across their desk, from cold outreach to their network to lots of different channels. So if you are right now in a sales process, that in itself means that you've stood out, you've captured their attention. But the question really is, what does a great buyer experience look like? nice big logo here that I think we all know on this webinar, Apple. And I want to use this as a case study today to think about what it's like being a consumer and how we can take that consumer experience and bring it into the world of B2B. If any of you have ever been to an Apple store, it feels incredibly personalized. When you go into the store, each area is organized per product. They're ready to use, they're ready to try. And when someone approaches you, they don't say, how can I help you? Or what are you looking for today? The reason is they know what you're looking for based on where you are in the store. So if you're checking out the new iPhone 16 or whatever model it is, they will come up to you and say, hey, did you know that the iPhone 16 has this camera with this functionality that can do X, Y, and Z? It's helpful, it's informative, it's relevant. It isn't just generic saying it for the sake of it. So it instantly feels personalized. It's a very, very different experience to pretty much every retail store out there. We take this a step further. The Apple Store is designed in a way where they give you what you need exactly when you need it. So what I mean by this is, I don't know if you've ever realized, but the checkout finds you. When you're ready to buy, you don't need to go up some elevators, down some stairs and find, where do I pay for this thing? You have someone dedicated coming up to you, supporting you with the relevant and useful information. And they guide you through this experience, learning about the product, showing you its capabilities. And then naturally, if you're ready to buy, they just whip out their iPhone and they can just tap on a few things and you're good to go. You haven't even moved one step. It's all built around you, that seamless experience whilst you're in the store. The power of this is that 81% of Apple customers own more than one device. And that doesn't mean that Apple creates or develops the world's best computers and the world's best phones. What they focus on is the entire experience in store, the product, the way they all talk to each other, these devices, the way they all connect, the ease of use, the look, the feel, everything about Apple is about the experience. And what that means is they have loyal and repeat customers, something we all dream of in the world of B2B, customers that are delighted, they love your software, they love what you provide and what you do to the point they refer you, they buy more from you, they grow, they expand, and so forth, which can be very, very challenging in B2B, but Apple seem to have nailed it. So when we think about this consumer world, it's pushed us all to expect these types of experiences everywhere we buy, and that means in B2B too. Just a few other examples. If you think of Amazon, those one-click checkout, the next day delivery, you go on social media, you don't need to search anymore. You have the right information, the right companies, the right providers popped up based on what you've been talking about at work. With payment, you can pay for anything, anytime, any plan, anyhow. It is an absolute dream being a consumer. Ollie, I don't know about you, but being a B2B buyer, it feels like the absolute opposite. It's ROI you've got to calculate. You've got to look at 5 different vendors. You have to look at integrations, security assessments, the list goes on. But you've bought some software before. It'd be good to hear your take on how you think this is complete opposite, this consumer experience to the B2B experience.
100%, Rory. I mean, it's not easy. We don't make it. I don't think many people make it easy to buy. I've been through buying software in a number of roles and with a number of companies. And the process actually impacted my thoughts on how to sell, because it's only when you actually become aware of how hard it is to be sat in that other seat that you actually realize that you need to do something about it. So yeah, it's not easy in many ways, and it's nothing like the consumer experience that we as individuals now expect.
And on that, what do we all expect? So in the world of being a consumer, it is all about the right information from the right person at the right time. So if we think about that Apple store, I went in, I was able to try the product. The person with that product knowledge came up to me and they were able to guide me on the right and relevant information. If you think of booking a holiday these days, you're shown based on like your age profile, who you're booking it for, if it's family, if it's for an individual, you're then only shown the packages, the providers, the add-ons that are based on you, your profile, demographic, and so forth. So it's always catered as a personalized experience. Ollie, how does this translate into the world of B2B and what we expect going through that process?
Yeah, I think it's really interesting because Accenture did some research a couple of years ago, and they found that 73% of B2B buyers want a personalized, and actually use the words B2C-like buying experience. And according to Gartner, the average buying group now has 11 active members, but also 7 occasional participants. So what you have here is different people, and these different people have different personas, so they all have different needs of what they're looking for. And so they want different things at different times. So it is quite a complex process. It's not just like going into a shop and buying a phone, but the demand of people is that they want this B2C like buying experience. And according to Demand Gen report, 87% of buyers want vendors to provide a relevant information at each stage of their buying journey. Again, so it's this right information to the right person at the right time. And we need to take the buyer on that journey, and it's being more buyer process centric in what we do, rather than thinking of a sales process. Because the first thing we do as a sales team is, right, the sales stages are these. This is what we do at this stage. And we don't think about the person that is at the other end that we're trying to make it easier for, that wants this buyer journey. So what tends to happen is they lose trust, is one of the first things they do. But we, as a sales team, lose the engagement and the traction. So it becomes a longer sales cycle. Even if we win the deal, we may lose the deal because of it. And one thing is, marketing have been trying to do this for years, and they do it very well. They take people on this journey of their education. But what tends to happen is we feed them, whether it's a sort of marketing-based, account-based marketing, or whether it's sort of another marketing campaign, it is that journey of education, awareness, education, etc. And then what happens is it becomes a sales thing, and we go, right, let's dump everything. Let's put all of our information onto them right now. And this gives a really bad experience, because they haven't changed. That person at the other end hasn't changed. We should be just feeding them the information that they need at the right time. And I think that the only time really we hold anything back is the proposal and the paper process. The rest of it is all here in one, but we've got to keep feeding them in the right way to the right people. And the thing is that 83% of the buyer's journey is self-directed. It's where they spend 17% of their time talking to reps. That's 17% of their time talking to you and your competitors. The rest of the journey is all done by themselves. So it's not about talking to them about it. It's about feeding them the right stuff at the right time. And we've got to listen to them. We've got to make it easier for them to do by putting this right information in front of the right people at the right time.
100% agree. I think you and I both have experienced this now. Like, we don't go to buy a new piece of software and go on that call being like, tell me what you do, because I have no idea. We've already been in maybe a sales community or pavilion or a WhatsApp group we're in to ask our peers. We've been on their website, we've been on G2, we've been trawling the web to understand who they are, who do they work with, do they have the right relevant functionality for us, high level, because everyone's time is so precious. And we're not going to sacrifice that time to get on a call to learn what they do. It's about, can you help me? And you mentioned there briefly, I just wanted to dig in about personalization throughout the journey. Are there any areas in particular that you think we should be doing or spending more time personalizing compared to the historic sales approach of, I do a discovery call, I do a demo, I send my follow-up, and I send the same deck every single time?
Yeah, I mean, that bit, part of it is hard to answer without referring to trumpet, and I don't want to be selling trumpet throughout this, but I mean, if I'm honest, it's understanding what they're doing when you're not in the room is a massive part of it, because we can feed them the information we want them to read, but do we know that they have been looking at it and reading it? Most of the time we don't know. And a tool like trumpet can help you understand that. But I do very much think it is about drip feeding. It's understanding. And I think that as a salesperson or a sales leader, asking the right questions about what the next step is and what do you need from me? What do your colleagues need from me? We know that, I think that the best salespeople ask the most questions, intelligent questions. And if you're doing that around what is needed at the other end, then you can start to do this and give them the right content at the right time, like we're talking about. But yeah, it is very much about just giving them what they need rather than the 5 bits of content you think they want. Give them what they need at that time. And that makes a big difference to that buying journey. I've experienced it both ways, in a bad way, where I've had everything thrown at me and I've lost what they do. And another that is actually go, okay, what are you looking for from this first meeting? I want X. Okay, brilliant. We'll give you that. And then what do you need now? That's the best way to do it.
Agreed. And on the right person front, multi-threading, hot topic, big talk these days. How do you think reps can effectively multi-thread from that very first conversation? What can they do before they get on that first call to make sure that they're giving the right information at the right time to the right person?
Yeah, I mean, before the call, there's the research side. I mean, I think people see research as, okay, 10-minute job. It's not. I mean, I've done jobs where I think you're better doing 2 hours even of research, even just to send an email to get a meeting. But it's doing the research to understand the business and what people will want. I always think about what their manager wants. If you're on with head of RevOps, think about what the VP of RevOps is wanting. So if you can talk a level higher and get the understanding from that, I think it's very important. But when it comes to stakeholders, when I was at LinkedIn, we got trained on a decision framework that's used by Bain called RAPID, recommender, approver, performer, influencer, and decision maker, bit of a test. And I think having that mindset to understand, okay, who is this person going to be? What is their role in this? And what do they want with every single person? If you can map it out and really understand every stakeholder, the thing with that is you've got this I, which is influencer, and you've got the P, which is performer. And a lot of people miss those because are they going to go to speak to someone that's going to use it or implement it? And who else in this process are you going to speak to that we haven't spoken to about so far? Then you're getting the full picture, and then understanding their needs, that gives you the full picture of what you're looking for.
Nice. I like that that quick test there, thinking on the spot of the different terms. And if we move on to the next one-stop shop. So if I think of being a consumer, I go to a brand again like Amazon. I can do my groceries there now. I can buy anything, anytime, anyhow there. Music, video is becoming this platform, and it makes me much stickier as a consumer. And you can now see that even with companies like Uber. You can do your food shop on there, you can get takeaway on there, you can get taxis on there, you can get boat on there, you can get trains on there. They are becoming really platform-esque, which means it's easier and easier for me to always go to them to use their system. And that's why they're huge global companies worth so much money. They've really captured sticky customers. But it's also that ease of always knowing the same UX, the same UI, the same experience, and everything just being pretty seamless, a word that we keep using. So again, that's what we're loving being a consumer. Where does that translate into the world of B2B?
Yeah, and when you talked about that, I think I was thinking about when my family went on holiday to Australia, and we had one app that we dealt with. I think it was Trail Finders, where we had our hotel bookings, our travel, and everything, and it made life so easy. And when we think about it, we're not talking about us being able to offer that; it's us offering that as a sales process. So how do you make it where people know where to go and they can get everything they need for my process or their buying process from one place? And what I found was that buying groups spend an average of 15% of the buying cycle reconciling different information sources. And that doesn't really surprise me, because when you think about it, we've got different platforms. So has that person emailed me? Have they sent it on Slack? Have they sent it on LinkedIn? Have they sent it on WhatsApp? You've got all of those. You've got the different types of software that they're using, whether it's video or an attachment or a different app for me to do part of the process, links, etc. And that's just from one vendor. So when you think about it, if companies are looking at 5 vendors, all of that, you've got a multitude of things that you're looking for, and it makes it really painful. We spoke to a company recently, and they realized that when they take a company through the sales process, they are using the prospect is using 8 different pieces of software up until close. And that is really tough that we're expecting them to do that. Whereas buyers prefer a single consolidated platform where all the relevant information and tools are easily accessible. So, and Gartner talked about 68% of B2B buyers said that having a consistent centralized resource influences their purchase decision. So it's not that it makes it easier for them, it actually influences which one they go with. So what happens if you don't do this? The buyer feels overwhelmed. They're wasting their time searching. And I know that one time a bit ago, I was looking at some software. I had 2 front runners, and after spending about 15 minutes trying to find something from one of these front runners, and it was head to head, but I couldn't find it. I went with the other one, and that was just because I could find the information. It wasn't much difference in their solution. So I realized what a differentiator is, the experience you're giving them. And also when I was at SalesLoft, I realized it because outreach came into the market, etc. 6 months after I started them up, and that buying experience was really important. If you're not think about this, you do lose deals. And the amount of time wasted because of, I know the call saying, I know you sent me this, but I can't find it. Can you send it over again? Then a question about it. It's not all in one place. And it just makes this a lot of friction in the process. Also for the company, I think it drives more of an inconsistent message. Marketing and sales, there's no central resource or anything. The message becomes a bit fuzzy. And I think lots of companies do try solve this. They think of, okay, well, we'll build it all in a drive or a shared folder, but that also comes with a lot of challenges. Is it up to date, and who's accessing it? So this is a problem for most companies. And I think when you think about your buyer, how do I make it easier with less friction, with one-stop shop so they know where everything is, that can be a massive differentiator.
Might surprise you, but I can advocate for that point, as it's pretty much why Trumpet exists. And not to pitch it, but when I was at Hotjar, we were in a hyper competitive space. We were bootstrapped, so we didn't have all the funding to add on every feature and integration like all of our competitors. And they had a lot more than us. It came at a price point, but for us, it was the thing that we always sold on was the ease of use and our experience. Like, we were great to work with. People loved the product. It was easy to use, easy to get started with. But in bigger deals, which we were focused on, how did we win them? And we start, as you were saying, like, you could go and put things in a shared Google Drive link, and that's exactly what we were doing. We doubled our win rate in 2 quarters, but very, very manual to do. But we saw how receptive buyers were when they've got this headache of, I'm looking at 4 or 5 different vendors. I don't know this space as well as you do. It's all a bit overwhelming. I'm suddenly having to learn like all of this industry terminology, all of these features, all of these things out of the blue in a very short time frame, and be able to communicate it internally to the 5, 10, 20 stakeholders to build that consensus. So whoever makes it the easiest, writes the business case for you, streamlines information and updates it rather than just keep dumping. We saw firsthand how grateful basically people were, because they've got their day job. Buying software is another job that they'd unexpectedly taken on, and there's the pressure, which ultimately leads to indecision. I think it's about 60% of deals that are lost are due to indecision. For anyone that's listening in here today, if you haven't checked out the Jolt effect, you 100% should. Very, very relevant in this modern age where we are basically paralyzed by choice, analysis paralysis. There is too much information out there, but something like a one-stop shop does help resolve that.
I just on that, I remember that when I first got approached by somebody using a digital sales room, and how impressed I was. Sadly, it wasn't Trumpet, but just the thought of how much easier it made my life as that buyer going through the process, that I could always go back to one link. I still remember it.
Yeah, we've all been through buying software. There's endless email threads, endless links, endless attachments. It's hard to know what's being shared when. And for anyone selling enterprise software or multi-product software, they'll be thinking this tenfold. We're going to move on to the final point here about what we all expect, and that is the complex made easy. If anyone has ever had a takeaway pizza before, you've probably at some point in your life had it from a company called Domino's. And being a consumer, it used to be complex buying or ordering pizza in that you didn't really know what was happening, when it was going to arrive, any status or anything like that. And Domino's were the first to create this visible, what's happening? Where is my pizza? Are they making it? Is the driver picking it up? Is it on its way? Is it delayed or anything like that? And just that visibility reduced the complexity of the order, which meant that people were much more loyal customers. They always went to Domino's because they knew what was happening. It didn't feel like a a process of unknowns. They had clarity, they had visibility. So what does Domino's look like in the world of B2B?
Yeah, and whether it's Domino's or something else, just that visibility and the complexity sometimes of managing a process. I think, to me, a collaborative sales process is like managing a project. You've got different actions. You've got different actions that need to be done at different times. They need to be done in a specific order. So, in other words, you need an NDA signed before you go to security, and they need the team to buy in before you start talking about numbers. So it is this, I think it's called a Gantt chart, something like that it reminds me of that I did with my degree. But it is this idea of what comes next, what has to happen, etc. And there's different people on both sides. I mean, you tend to, in an enterprise deal, you probably have anywhere on the sales side, anywhere from 3 to 8 people, depending on the company, sometimes even more. And then you bring in an exec alignment, etc. And then on the prospect side, you've got a lot. I mean, you can have 40 plus sometimes, but the key stakeholders in there that you want to deal with, probably about 5 to 10. So that makes it very complex when they all have different needs, different times, etc. And 90% of B2B buyers said they expect sellers to act as consultants, guiding them through a complex purchasing decision. And this is about how you can partner them. How do we guide them through? And that was by Salesforce. They brought out that stat. And also HubSpot, they obviously know exactly what they're doing in this space. They realize that deals that involve collaborative planning are 30% more likely to close successfully, i.e. more chance of close winning a deal if it's collaboratively planned, your rep and their side as well, which we speak to so many companies at the moment that they are trying to roll out mutual action plans. Whether you call them mutual action plans, go live plans, there's a number of ways of saying what it is, but it's joint success plan. But most people are trying to do this at the moment, but it's really hard to do. If you're not doing it, your buyer tends to get overwhelmed. The reps lose control and visibility, and there's a lot of misalignment in regards to priorities and next steps. So you end up losing deals, they either drag or slip. And also, for me as a sales leader, it's bad forecasting. I know if someone's got a really robust mutual action plan in, I know there's more chance of the forecasting being good. And what I found is that a lot of companies, a lot of teams use their own sales process to define the mutual action plan. I'm going to demo, and then I'm going to do this. And they're thinking about the sales stages rather than, okay, these are our processes and what are your processes? And I think that another gap I also see is that they don't think about, okay, in the mutual action plan, it's purely about what happens when we meet. I think the best ones are ones that say, okay, we're going to meet in 2 weeks and we're going to talk about X. What do you need to do before that meeting, and what do you need from me? So you both understand what's going on behind the scenes within both parties, the buyer and the seller. And that's what's important. That's where complex becomes easy. Once you provide the full visibility of all the processes and the timing, and whether you use Medic or not, whether you use mutual action plans or go live plans, when you've got multiple stakeholders in a complex cycle, the mutual action plan idea is something that is you lose out if you're not doing a good one of them.
Totally agree. I think we've seen increasingly this topic around sales becoming project management. It's a given. I think the days of transactional software purchases are fading to a certain degree, maybe not for SMB and so forth. But as we said, like a buyer arriving on the call, knowing who you are, what you do, who your competitors are, they're there because they're in a project. They need guiding on that project. And as sellers, we've done this time and time and time again, or even in CS, we've onboarded multiple hundreds of customers. So how do we create visibility and accountability of who's doing what, when, to guide things forward, to create momentum and ensure that they go live successfully? That's the ultimate outcome. It's not a to-do list on top of someone's day job. It's there to actually help qualify out some conversations, but really for the ones that are an active evaluation or project, to ensure that timelines are met, things are done successfully, capacity is and resources are assigned effectively. And I think when used properly, they're incredibly powerful. But I think there's a perception of them just being a to-do list or what we've done so far.
I think there's also a perception of, I shouldn't, they're the ones with the power. I shouldn't be telling them what they need to do. I think there's either I'm going to tell them what to do, or I can't tell them what to do. And the best salespeople I've worked with, they're the ones that see this as a joint plan that they will sit down with, and they're partnering the person on the buying process. It is both of you got to make decisions as to, are we right for them? Are they right for us? And let's partner on this. And now, I mean, I think there's a lot of people out there that aren't experienced buyers, and even small deals have to go to the CFO. So there's normally a business case has to be built. How do we do this together? And I think that's where sales is going, that it is a joint project.
Definitely. There's no decision maker anymore. It's decision makers. There's no buyer. It's a buying committee. Everything has changed. So anything we can do to make the complex easy, I think goes a long way. And buyers are very grateful for. So if we think about all of this, we've gone through the dream of being a consumer, what that would look like in the world of B2B. Why do you think these experiences haven't found their way to the world of B2B? It does feel like, for the most part, companies are still stuck in the same way they've sold and onboarded and built a customer journey in the way that they have for the last 5, 10, 20 years.
I mean, for me, I think that I can imagine Apple and companies sit down and go, and there's some very top level people in a room going, how do we make the buyer journey easier? I can't think of many companies probably in the B2B tech SaaS space that have sat there and gone, right, how do we make this journey easier? I think it's not been a priority for companies. So, and I think it should be, because that's what it all comes down to. But it's it makes a massive difference, but I just don't think people have prioritized it. And I think that's why it's not yet made its way in. But I do think that when people experience a good buying process, they start to realize it. And I mean, the number of people we sold to at Sales Loft or whatever company I've worked at, when someone buys in a nice way, they're ready to say, we really enjoyed that experience. And be honest, at Sales Loft, we had people come to us and say, we bought from you above your competitors because of the experience we went through as a buyer. And we want to copy some of that. So I think it's growing. I think people are becoming aware, but there is no job title at the moment that says you're concentrating on the buyer experience when we sell.
And was it that feedback that prompted you to get the team to think about sales excellence, awareness of the buying journey, the buying experience? Was it, or what was the trigger that led you to prioritizing that?
I think that, I mean, I spent 10 years at LinkedIn, which means that you become very customer focused. That's their mentality. And it started like that. But I think that it was two-pronged at Sales Loft. It was that, but also we were selling to sales leaders. And I remember early days, I said, we've got to make sure that we have the best sales process on the market. If the products have parity, we can differentiate still. And if we give the best sales experience, we'll win more deals. And it worked. We had a larger 70% win rate against one of our main competitors. And it was because of that experience. And that's when I've kept it with me. It's not just selling to sales leaders. It is about that buyer experience that is a big differentiator. And if they enjoy working with you, they want to continue working with you. And if it's what the relationship you've built, most people were buying because of a relationship, not just because of a product.
And do you think we can take a leaf out of marketing's book? And the reason I flag that is we all know that in the world of D2C or being a consumer, marketing, there's a lot more freedom because you're trying to capture the attention of the masses. You're not selling to enterprise, so you need to be very safe and very formal and everything that people think is the typical behavior. And you're seeing increasingly big brands in B2B try and take a more consumer-like approach to marketing.
Yeah.
Do you see that now starting to happen within the revenue space for sales and CS?
I do. I think that it's definitely something that we should think about. I think when you look at consumer, I mean, if you look at Jeff Bezos, he says that your brand is something that people say about you when you're not in the room. And what impacts that is the buying experience. Do tech companies sit there and go, let's discuss our brand? And do they talk about the buying experience when they're discussing their brand, or are they purely talking about the marketing experience? And I think it's a really interesting point because it does impact it. And whether that person buys from you or not, or buys from you 2 years down the line, that experience is influential in what they will say about you when you're not in the room. So I definitely think we can take a page out of marketing book, especially in the consumer space, when we sit down. I'd urge all companies to sit down and say, when we talk about brand, let's think about the buying process, any connection, any contact we have with a company, whether we're cold calling, whether we're trying to sell to them, what is that experience like?
Yeah, I think you make a really good point there, in that every B2B company, we always focus on our sales process, because our sales process reflects our pipeline. That's how we close deals. That's then how we onboard customers. But if we look at this, that's not how buyers buy. What a headache. These are all of the different channels, avenues, areas of research that they do. And towards that fourth step, which is supplier selection, basically they're 75% of their way through their journey, and that's where they'll then engage. And 95% of this entire journey is spent without you. It is so complex. Evaluating, researching, then reaching out, deciding who you're going to progress, building the requirements, getting internal alignment. It is an absolute headache. And I don't think we make it any easier for them by trying to funnel them through our rigid sales process. You have a discovery call, you then have a demo, then we do, it doesn't work. So I'm not sure what your take is on this overwhelming experience. And I'm not sure if it's going to get easier given how choice, as we saw at the very start of this webinar, is increasing for buyers.
Yeah, I think that, one thing, I don't think we're saying don't have a sales process and don't have your sales stages and don't have sales methodology. I think they just need to be very buyer-centric. And I think that, like, I was listening to a podcast recently, and it was a playbook company. I don't know if it's Andy White or Rick in RevLogic. I can't remember which one it was, but they were talking about how that Medic should be very much buyer-centric. When you're talking about metrics, it's not just to sell to them, it's about building that internal business case for them to help them buy. When you're mapping out the people, you're again understanding so that you can help them buy. So all of this, I completely agree. That people are getting more and more information before talking to you. I think a lot of companies then let them down by making the process not easy. You've got to get what you want and provide them what they want and make sure it's aligned. So any sales methodology or process you're using, make sure that you are taking into consideration the way that the buyer buys from you at the same time and how you're helping them buy.
It's interesting you mentioned that. So methodologies being a key pillar to how we think and our mindset around this. But there's also tools themselves and how disconnected the way that we share knowledge and information with our buyers. It does feel very disconnected. The reason I say that is, I'm not sure if you've seen this, but I think most companies still rely on the same sales deck they've had for the last few years, bit of a rebrand, bit of a refresh here and there, but expecting an entire sales process and buyer journey to revolve around this 20, 30 slide deck. And that's it. They have that discovery call and they send it as a follow-up. They have their logo, they personalize a few slides, but that's not the business case. That's not how you project manage. That's not how you enable them to sell when you're not in the room, because you're speaking to champion. They've got to speak to their team, which could be 3 or 5 or plus people. They've then got to speak to exec leadership, which could be a dozen people. You and I experienced this recently. We were doing a deal. We spoke to 6 people. And then when we shared our digital sales room, there were 40 other people involved in that deal. 40. We would never have guessed that. And we were always speaking to that one champion. And we're still working out how to improve this. Like, how do we equip them to understand who we work with, what we do, which parts of the product are relevant for which other departments, creating micro demos, creating exec summaries, all of this. It is, I think there's a real opportunity for leveling up revenue teams to put themselves into the buyer's shoes and realize how they buy. It's got to be digestible. It's got to be personalized, like we said at the start. But there is so much more that can be done. And I think the modern seller, it's not just about project management, but it's about buyer enablement as well. But it'd be good to hear your take on that.
Yeah, it's funny. It's sort of putting two together in my mind now, because I think that for a while, since when I was back at SalesLoft, what I always told my team is, imagine that you're trained by SalesLoft, but you no longer work for them. That's not me firing them, but actually just have this mindset that you know everything about our product, but imagine that you're working for your prospect, and they've paid you. You can't get any more money from them, but your job is to just simply make sure that they make the right decision as to whether they should buy SalesLoft. And that's how I think an AE should be thinking. When you then add everything we've been talking about it being a partnership, it being a project, and this is where I think qualification methodologies help as well, because it's okay to say, no, we are not right. When you've built the decision criteria, if you don't tick 3 key boxes, don't continue trying to sell to them. That is you as a consultant saying, SalesLoft isn't right for you, or we are not right for you, because unless these 3 are things that you can move on. So I think just having that mindset as a sales team of, yes, I'm trained by my employer, but I'm purely advising my prospect. That's how we should be selling, and working out if it's right, and working out whether it's right for the level of investment that it's going to take. Because sometimes it's like, well, actually your ROI is only going to be 10K and it's going to cost you 20K. It's not worth you buying it. That's okay. That saves you churn later down the line. It's just doing the right things in the sales process. And I think that is very important.
Definitely. So with that, how do you go from it feeling broken to feeling like they're buying from Apple in the world of B2B? We believe at Trumpet it's with digital sales rooms. So what is a digital sales room? It is a single source of truth internally and externally for everyone involved in an evaluation. From that very first call all the way through to contract sign and even beyond to onboarding and renewal, it becomes one space that can host and contain everything from mutual action plans, business cases, demo recordings, case studies, and so much more. If you think what we've been speaking about in this webinar is how fragmented the buying journey is across the different conversations, across the different assets and content over a 3, 6, 12-month journey, when they're buying 1, 2, or 3 different products from your product suite, it is overwhelming. But if we could put all of that into one space, it just makes sense. And if we've then got visibility on who's engaging with what content, who's interacting with what components within that deal room, it means that we can then have the right conversations with the right people at the right time. Ollie, be interested to hear your take on the value of digital sales rooms given the context of this webinar.
Yeah, I mean, it's my team used Trumpet when I was at SalesLoft, and they've used it in other companies since. The value, I must admit, being a typical leader at the beginning, I didn't get into the weeds of what Trumpet really was. I didn't know the benefits of it when my team said, can we buy it? I was like, yeah, just go ahead. But that's obviously changed. But I think that what I've seen from my teams using it is how important it is, and the amount of people now that I'm at Trumpet, that whether they're applying for a job or just connecting with me or being contacts in a while, they talk about how it's been life-changing for them, which I think is quite dramatic to say a tool has been life-changing. But I mean, I got a message this morning just saying I love Trumpet, and the amount it's impacted the way that I sell, it has been career-changing for me. So I think in today's world where it is becoming more buyer-centric, offering an easy way for companies and individuals to buy and buy as teams, that's a big point, has a huge impact. And I think that it changes hopefully the rep's mindset of what do they need from me at the moment. In a way, it's sort of coaching the rep to do the right thing rather than dump everything and take them on a journey. And I mean, as we know, there's some fantastic stats out there about how many software purchases will be made over digital sales rooms in the future. And it's I can see why. I think it's fantastic. And I mean, obviously work here, I'm going to say that, but I would have said it before.
We're tad biased. Absolutely. And I think, if we think of the value of like conversational intelligence, we're getting these insights into, a call right now. I'm speaking to you, Ollie, I'm selling this product. I'm getting told about the next steps that are going to happen. I was getting told about my talk to listen ratio. I'm getting these insights that mean that I can improve the synchronous journey. But if we then think only 5% of that is with the buyer, so there's 95% of their buying journey that is without us, the value of a digital sales room, a single source of truth, a collaborative workspace, it's not so much about trumpet. It's more about if you can enable your champion so when you're not in the room, you unlock that 95%. And by unlocking that 95%, you then have confidence. You go into your deal reviews knowing, are we speaking to the right stakeholders? Have they looked at the right information? Are they, is this like creating momentum? Are we at the right stage of this evaluation? With those things, you then feel that you're in control. There's nothing worse than finishing a discovery call, sending the follow-up. You've got a meeting in 2 weeks and you don't know what's happening between now and then. You feel like you're losing control because so many different priorities can pop up day to day, week to week in all of our busy lives. And with this, you're able to give every buyer that same standout experience. Historically, it's just with a PDF, it's just with a deck, which isn't really standout. So enabling your champion with a personalized, private, collaborative workspace means whether it's a small or big deal, you can give them all a seamless one journey. We're proud to be able to prove this and work with incredible customers like Gong, HubSpot, and even Cognizant here, who really focused on enabling their buyers and making it easy for them to sell internally. And we'd love to share more case studies with all of you, especially at our upcoming events. So in April, we'll be having a deep dive into what makes up a best-in-class buyer experience toolkit. You're probably thinking, what is a buyer experience toolkit? We're going to break it down. How do you enable your champion throughout the entire buying journey with tools, processes, methodologies, frameworks? So we're going to break that down for you. And then in May, join us at our next webinar where we'll be revealing the tangible performance gains when sellers have those 3 C's. Confidence, I'm just going to jump back, confidence, control, and consistency. And then finally, in June, we'll be exploring the buyer journeys of self-proclaimed happy buyers. So we'll be speaking with the likes of Cognizant and many more about the changes that they've seen in their sales velocity, in their time to value for customers by thinking about this buyer-centric approach to selling. So we're going to wrap up now. The 5 key learnings from today. Buyers are overwhelmed. We can all admit it. We're all way too busy, and buying software has just become way too complex when it really doesn't need to be, especially because of how we purchase as a consumer. Being a great buyer experience creates magical moments. Think about the Apple Store, and it really doesn't take much to bring those moments of delight into your sales process and your buying journey. This ultimately then gives you an edge over your competition and how you can make your buying journey a competitive differentiator and give your sellers confidence, control, and consistency. But by doing this, you then expect happy buyers to thank you and thank your sellers, which is pretty rare. When we're selling software, we never get a thank you, but we keep seeing that with the buyer-centric customers that we work with. Thank you for joining us today. We'd love all the questions that have been in the chat. Feel free to connect with both myself, Ollie, and the wider team. We'd be happy to connect with you individually if you want to learn more about how we're working with all of our customers today, what even is a digital sales room in more detail, or if you really want to dig into the world of buyer enablement and what does this strategy methodology look like and how you can start embracing the shift that we're seeing in buying behavior. But that's it from me. And Ollie, any final words from you?
No, it's been good. Thank you very much. I've enjoyed talking about it.
Cheers. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.